Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me check my sound, make sure my sound is doing okay. Ooh, that's the wrong button. Hope everyone is doing okay. It is 7:03 on a Tuesday. Today is going well. That's why I check my sound. That's exactly why I check my sound. My sound was low. So I want to thank everyone who's tuning in. I'm sorry, I'm bad at doing two things at once. All right, yeah. So first, I want to thank Michael Horn for coming on the show. I told him in the beginning I was going to be skeptical because, after all, I was skeptical about the case. He was a good sport about my skepticism, and he still wanted to come on and talk about it. So yeah. So there's that. I mean, I appreciate him coming on. I appreciate him talking about the concerns. And people themselves, if they want to, they can pull up the information. But getting back to terrestrial matters, politics, the wheelhouse of the show. Jill Stein. Jill Stein is still dealing with fallout for having the temerity to run in the race against Hillary Clinton. All of this is about that. You have all of these people who wanted Hillary Clinton to win, who expected Hillary Clinton to win, and believed in some odd way that these were her votes, that you owed her your vote. And if there's somebody else with the temerity to get into the race, you shouldn't get into the race with Hillary Clinton. And if there's any chance at all that you've helped Hillary Clinton lose, there needs to be consequences. Well, this is essentially what's taking place right now with Jill Stein. The consequences. They're trying to politically bash her with this Russiagate nonsense. They haven't even established the Russiagate nonsense that's taking place, and yet CNN, pushing this particular narrative, being stenographers of the government, is hitting her over the head. They had one show with Jill Stein, held her shape, and she was amazing. Katie Johnston recommended this particular video. CNN is calling it Jill Stein Breaks Her Silence about the Russiagate stuff. I haven't watched this yet. I'm going to watch this with my audience. I used to do this all the time when I had my old setup. I've tried to start doing it now because people tend to like those segments. So this is Jill Stein, I would imagine, being browbeat by CNN. Let's take a look at the show. I think this is about 7 minutes long. I'm going to interject, of course, to give my own commentary as it goes on. Again, I haven't watched this, so this is going to be an experience we're going to have together. Jill, let's see if I can see it right. Yeah. Jill, hold your shape. I voted for you. Hold your shape. All right, let's see what we got. CNN.
Refusing to fully.
Right here. All right. So this is supposedly called Jill Stein's campaign objects to Senate requests for Russian documents. And by the way, there have been a lot of idiots on Facebook that have said bad things about Jill Stein because they wanted Hillary Clinton to win. If your candidate was such a failure that she couldn't get over the finish line on her own steam, then your candidate was a failure that couldn't get on the finish line on her own steam. She lost to reality show hosts. That tells you about everything. Jill Stein, anybody else, Scooter Magoo, if he wanted to, could run in our race. It is their right. They're American citizens. They can run in our elections provided they meet the constitutional requirements. Jill Stein, as far as I know, meets all of the constitutional requirements. She ran in the race. That's the end. Now, you could try to say she shouldn't have ran in the race and all this other stuff. Nonsense. You're trying to say for your candidate to get over the hurdle, fuck democracy. Well, that's not where I am. If your candidate needs to get over the finish line, then she needs to get there on her own steam. Nobody owes her their vote. Hillary Clinton lost to reality show hosts. That's embarrassing. That should burn to each and every Hillary Clinton supporter. Jill Stein had nothing to do with that woman failing at the rate that woman failed. Let's take a look at Jill Stein. Jill Stein, CNN, with what I expect to be somewhat of a ridiculous interview with CNN pushing a mainstream media narrative and trying to browbeat her for having the temerity to run into the race. All of this, however, is going to be under the guise of, hey, why aren't you complying with the Senate for this Russiagate nonsense, even though we haven't established that the Russiagate nonsense is taking place, or that the most that we could find were a bunch of Twitter and Facebook trolls. Twitter and Facebook trolls. And they say that as if that's some kind of smoking gun. That's absurd. That's absurd. Let's take a look at Jill Stein, see if she holds her shape Do your thing, Jill.
Comply with the Senate Intelligence Committee's Russia investigation. Stein and the campaign is turning over some documents, have done so already, related to her campaign's contacts with Russia, but they're holding back others. Dr. Jill Stein joins us now. Appreciate you taking the opportunity.
Great to be with you, Chris.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Doctor. So, you know what the implication is. If you don't fully comply, that means you're hiding something. And if you're hiding something, that makes people suspicious that maybe you had something to do with the Russian interference.
Well, let's get the facts straight. We complied with everything actually relevant to the question of Russian interference. We turned over all of our communications with Russian media, Russian government, Russian business, although there was no communications to turn over. Likewise, anything having to do with WikiLeaks or with opposition research or Fusion GPS. We actually fulfilled all the requests. Most of them.
By the way, he just said that privacy, for the most part, if you're private, that is a bizarre standard that he's using on this. It's like, hey, you know what they say, if you don't turn over each and everything that you're asked for, even if what you're being asked for is inappropriate, then you're somehow guilty. What do you have to say about that, Jill Stein? Let's dig into your life, buddy. Do you want to turn over each and everything that you've done to the American public for them to take a look at? I mean, come on. That can't be the standard. Let's keep a look going. I'm not going to stop at that, but that's a weird standard. That's a very bizarre standard. That's almost like people saying, well, if you have nothing to hide, you don't necessarily mind having surveillance on you 24/7. Is that really true? Is that what you want? Should Jill Stein have to turn over each and everything, even if it has nothing to do with the investigation? That's what the question boils down to. Let's keep going.
We're blank. We didn't have any such communications. And what we did have with Russian government and media was really related to what time we were going to show up for an RT appearance and the logistics of our trip to the conference in Moscow with RT. So all of that was turned over. What we didn't turn over was material that basically protects the civil liberties of all Americans. So at a time when our civil liberties are really being seriously eroded, for example, the use of our private data.
I love the scowl on his face. Can we go back to that for the moment? He has this practiced scowl. That is awesome. Look at this. He's like a drinker. He looks like he drinks, but he looks like he's so angry. Like, you got in a race with Hillary Clinton. She was supposed to win. She was supposed to win. Yeah, I get it, buddy. Let's keep going. I'm sorry. I don't mean to intervene on that one. It's just the look on his face. It's like he's an angry dad. That's what he looks like, an angry dad that just has something to drink. And the kid just came in after like crashing the car. It's like, dude, she's not your child. And yeah, Hillary Clinton lost on her own merits. Get over it. Let's keep going.
Are really being seriously eroded. For example, the use of our private data. You know, we have a privacy protection. That's part of our civil liberties, but that's been horribly violated. 87 million Americans have basically had their data taken, and there are up to 2,000 data points on every American that are being used.
Listen, I hear you about that. That's certainly a concern.
Cambridge Analytica thing.
We've been covering it and the potential need for regulation and what will the industry do. However, back to you. What did you not turn over in the name of civil liberties?
Exactly. So what we did not turn over, and I should add, we also turned over our policy positions, which were the same as what we said publicly throughout the campaign. So there was nothing hidden there. We turned over our policy. What we did not turn over was our internal discussions about policy, which were really no great shakes because there was not much difference between the policies that the Green Party has held for a long time and the policies of the campaign. So it's not like there's some, special golden goose that we're protecting here or some vulnerable conversation, but rather we're standing up on a principle. And that is the principle that's part of the First Amendment, our right to basically freedom of association And that, that needs to be protected. And the courts have always upheld that.
Right, and we'll see. There'll be some litigation here if the government...
I have to be honest, this is somewhat of an odd way to... counteract this, because she sounds like... It sounds odd, if that makes sense. Like, what I mean by this is, if I'm listening to this and somebody says, hey, why didn't you turn over all of the documents associated with the investigation? Meaning the Senate wanted X, why do you turn it over? And I suspect that the real reason for this is this Russian investigation is nonsense, and we're not necessarily going to give you out internal documents and stuff that we talked about, our campaign deliberations, with this thing being nonsense. This is bogus. You guys are using this as a way to attack the left, and we're not playing this game. Perfectly understand that position. Now, the question becomes, how do you translate that for an American audience that may not quite understand the nonsense of it? Like, the majority of the American public believes that Russia has something to do with it because they've drunk the Kool-Aid on this. Jill Stein is not necessarily in that camp of being somebody who drunk the Kool-Aid. And being somebody that she's on the left, she understands that they're using this as a way to try to stem leftist opposition to what the Democratic Party is. That means that if somebody wants to run again in the next election, 2020, will they think twice about running again, knowing that the Democratic Party was able to create this kind of bogus whirlwind of this Russian nonsense in order to attack Donald Trump and to use it as a way to stem the populist left? I understand what she's getting at, but it's being translated in a weird way. That's all. Like the way she's communicating this, I'm standing on the grounds of civil liberties. Maybe, okay, kind of. I don't know if I fully believe that. Now, and I'm saying that as somebody who actually supports her. But maybe I don't fully believe it because I think she thinks this is nonsense. And that she's trying to come up with an argument to get across that this is nonsense without saying this is nonsense. If that makes sense. It's not that I think she's wrong that she's standing on a particular principle, if that makes sense. I just don't think it's fully the reason and the motivations for why she's not giving into this, if that makes sense. If it was me, I would feel some kind of way about them asking me for stuff that I think is bogus. I think this is nonsense. I think you guys are ginning up this whirlwind of stuff in order to attack Donald Trump, and you're trying to take the left out. Now, do I say that on CNN? I don't know. Would I try to say something else without saying that specific thing? I don't know. Like, I don't know the pressure that Jill Stein is under, and I don't necessarily know the threats that she believes are out there for her. And I mean political threats. They're literally trying to impeach Donald Trump. Some of the guys who I actually like in Congress, I like Grayson. Grayson is on this bandwagon of trying to impeach Donald Trump. I think this is nonsense. I think this is nonsensical. You can't let a president walk after killing 1 million people, then turn around and saying you're going to impeach Donald Trump. He hasn't done anything anywhere near that scale of bad and horrific for you to impeach Donald Trump. So there's that. But it's very possible that Jill Stein looks at this and says, they may come after me in a different way, in which case how I go about my affairs need to be done in a particular fashion. That's also possible. Haven't talked to Jill Stein. I don't know the threats that she's seeing from where she stands. This is kind of like chess. You see everything from the side of the board, but it's hard to see things where you're sitting down in the table itself. I don't know what she's looking at. I just know that this is being processed in an odd way, and I don't necessarily know if I am fully buying the standing on the side of civil liberties thing. Not because I think she did anything nefarious. We need to be very clear on that. And it's possible that I am thinking this way because from my filter, I look at this as being bogus, and I suspect that she also looks at this to some degree as being bogus. She's translating it, however, for a CNN audience as I'm standing on civil liberties and principles. She's not wrong about the civil liberties aspect. Don't get me wrong about that. Meaning they shouldn't be intruding into your political affairs in this way. They are using this as a way to try to attack these other elements that they don't necessarily like. So she's not fully wrong on standing on the civil liberties. That is an argument that you can take. But is that her reason is somewhat of a different question. I hope I'm making that clear. Let's let her keep going. Maybe this becomes a little bit clearer.
Government really decides that they want it. We'll see how it plays out. Let me ask you something. With all of the information that's come out since the campaign period, do you still have reservations about whether or not Russia interfered in our election and did so with obvious negative intent?
So let me say, I think it would be naive to think that Russia did not try to interfere. Certainly that's what the United States does, and that's not to justify it. Interference is wrong, and it's an assault against democracy, and it should be pursued. But we should pursue it knowing that we do it too. As James Woolsey, the former CIA head, recently said publicly, I believe it was on Fox, yes, we're doing that, and we always do it. And the records show that we do it about twice as much as the Russians over the course of the past, really since the Second World War. So, this is an issue, and it should be solved, I think, not by, retribution, not by going to war, not by saber rattling. It should be solved really through dialogue and diplomacy, which is showing, that it gets real results on the Korean Peninsula right now. We need to adopt that position right now and not go at it with bombs and missiles and threats, but with international dialogue, and we need a treaty for international non-interference in elections.
That would...
She's right. Good point. She's right. Like, CNN continuously asks her this question. Do you believe Russia interfered? Do you believe Russia interfered? Do you believe Russia interfered? They want her to essentially capitulate on that point. They want her to say, yes, Russia helped my campaign, which she should not say. Russia had no impact in this election. Whether they tried to interfere versus whether they had an impact are two very different things. She in no way should undermine her campaign in saying something like that, nor should Bernie Sanders have undermined his campaign in saying any ridiculous stuff like that. That's what he wants her to say. Her answer to this is great. Yes, they potentially interfered. I mean, all nations to some degree try to interfere and try to sway politics to the strength that they have to be able to sway politics. And so do we. And we do it all the time, and we do it in multiple countries. It's not good when we do it, nor is it good when they do it, and there need to be an international ban on it. I love it. Perfect answer. Let's keep going.
Really be the case for Russia to make, not from the American perspective. Of course, there's hypocrisy involved. Lots of different big state actors do lots of things that they may not want people to know about. But let Russia say that the United States did this to us, and here's how they did it. So this is fair play. From the American perspective, and you running for president more than once of this country, shouldn't your position have been, this was bad what they did?
What? What? What just happened? He acknowledges, I love this. I love this. I keep making this argument that CNN are just state stenographers. That's all they are. In the same way you have China state media, Russia Today, and all this other stuff, CNN is state media. Shouldn't your position from the American perspective have been, what she just told you was correct? She just told you that the United States interferes with other elections. In his case is, yes, we do interfere in other elections. There is hypocrisy. But in spite of that hypocrisy, shouldn't your position have been her position? She just told you what her position was. That we should not be interfering in elections, nor should Russia or anybody else be interfering in elections. Why are you still asking this question? Why are you still asking this question? This question is being asked from the perspective of somebody that's a stenographer, not a journalist, and is a talking face trying to talk down to Jill Stein. What she told you was perfectly correct. There's nothing else to say on that question. And yet, he's asking the question in a different way. Let's see if she answers it in a different way. Please don't.
They're trying to do it right now, and we have to stop it.
I think that kind of position, which says that we're in a totally different category from the rest of the world, is not working. This century of American domination, sort of didn't play out the way we thought it would. We're embroiled now. We have the military in practically every country around the world. In the recent taxes that people paid, the average American paid almost $3,500 that went into the Department of Offense, I would call it, not the Department of Defense, $3,500, whereas we put $40 into the EPA. 57% of our discretionary dollars now are going into the military. It's part of a mindset that says we're always right and they're always wrong, and we're going to be, dominating militarily and economically.
Yes! Yes, she's right. There have been people on Twitter giving her shit about that answer, but nothing she said was wrong. Like, I understand some of these people want to do this rah-rah American exceptionalism thing. We're not exceptional. We're just human beings. Just like other people are just human beings. Yes, we have economic might in the military for, you know, all of this money wasted on the military and everything else. But at the end of the day, we're just people. Just like the other people are just people. We're no better. We're no worse. Him asking, shouldn't you look at this from the American perspective only? No, you shouldn't. That gets us into wars. Places like CNN, MSNBC, you get us into wars by having that particular perspective and not having this kind of globalist perspective when you look at events. If they're doing it, how are you going to bitch about us doing it? And I'm reversing it. I'm saying it backwards. But if we do this all across the world, what he's talking about is Facebook and Twitter ads. Like I have to keep repeating this because it sounds so stupid when you say it. And yet, CNN, this talking face, is dedicating time to talking about Facebook and Twitter ads that had no impact on the election, when she's making the point to him, we do this all around the world. How are you bitching about Facebook and Twitter ads? And yet, he bitches still. I will give him credit. He is allowing her to talk, so fair enough. He's not completely interrupting her. And in this case, he's better at that than I am. I tend to interrupt my guests. I don't mean to. Just thought comes in my head and I do express it. But she's right. Jill Stein is perfectly right on this. I mean, this idea of American exceptionalism is insanity. We're not different than anybody else. We're just human beings. We fuck up with the best of them. And fact is, we went from a unipolar power to this kind of shrinking empire based on the things that we've done across the globe. Iraq War was a misstep. The Vietnam War was a misstep. We're wasting our money into this military in this way. We're spending trillions on the military. They're talking about a jobs program, a federal jobs guarantee to make sure that each and every person has a job. We spend like $700 billion on the military. That is not including black budget. We spend like $1 trillion a year on the military. Think about how much money that is. And they're saying, can we make sure that we get rid of poverty? Oh man, it costs too much money. But murdering people across the globe, not so much. We can do that. We can spend money on that. We can make $80 billion in a blink of an eye to kill people abroad. But if you want to make sure that each person has the potential for an education, that's too expensive. Think about what our priorities are when that's what's said in Washington and when that's the conversation and when that's the debate. $300 billion to make sure that each and every person who wants a job gets a job. We spend $1 trillion on the military. Are you telling me that we can't afford to make... That's going into a different story. It annoys the shit out of me that these are the conversations that we have. But what she's saying here is perfectly correct. And I love the fact that she's saying it on CNN, so an audience of 65 and older, how many ever, whatever people are watching this can see it. Voted for that woman. Fucking proud to vote for that woman. You do your thing, Jill.
We're in a multipolar world right now, and we need to behave as an exemplary member of the community, and that.
Yes, she used my term, multipolar. The reason why I like that is because, look, after World War II, you had this thing where this mutually assured destruction, United States and the Soviet Union, and you had these two competing economic systems. One competing system falls down, stumps his knee, falls apart. And then you have the United States that chest stumps and says, yes, we fucking won. We own this goddamn planet. We're going to put military bases in one country after the next. We're going to expand our empire. If we want to go into Iraq, fuck it, we're going to go into Iraq. Nobody's going to do anything about it. We're going to tell the European Union that they're going to be client states of ours. And we're going to run this planet. And one policy after the next. That is effectively what the United States has done. They went into Iraq and destroyed a country. They went into Libya, destroyed a country. They are trying to do the same thing in Syria. Now, I'm making this point to say, at some point, it stopped being a unipolar world. In fact, you can always make an argument that there was no game to win. There was always a changing and juxtaposition of forces that always change and permutate. There is no such thing as just winning the game, and a game that's what do you call it, in-dimensional game. The game always goes on. You have all of these different actors now that have created and cobbled together a force based on, in some degree, the behavior that the United States has taken, thinking it was a unipolar world. You have China that's economically talking about trying to put the world back on a gold standard. You have Russia that's hoarding huge amounts of gold. You have Iran that essentially is dumping the dollar. Economically, this stuff is brought on by us. Why do you think that China wants to get off the dollar as a reserve currency? Why do you think that Russia is hoarding all of this gold? China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, those countries have become military aligned. And the United States have been making strikes in there, getting much, much closer to doing something and stepping over a line. China has come out vocally saying we are in support of the Russian government. We want America to know, explicitly said, we want America to know that we're allies. Jill Stein is perfectly right. This idea of American exceptionalism and all this other stuff, it gets us into wars. It makes people think that what we're doing by definition is correct, and that is nonsense. That is utter nonsense. We act in the same way that other people act for our whatever incentives are in the situation.
That is by upholding ourselves and leading the way on international law, human rights, and diplomacy.
Well, one of the ways you do that
That
is...
approach is really paying off on the Korean Peninsula right now, and I think we should be using it more broadly.
Well, that's an interesting nod to the success of the administration, and it's echoed by many others. We'll see where it goes. Hopefully, there is peace on the Korean Peninsula. That may be something that Russia is not that interested in, and that goes to why there's such tension between the countries. Let me ask you one last thing. Why did you go to the RT?
What the hell is he talking about? That the weird way, even in which he said that there may be peace on the peninsula, and then he says, well, Russia doesn't want peace on the peninsula. What the hell is he talking about? What is he talking about? I don't understand what he's talking about. Is he trying to say that Russia doesn't want peace in North and South Korea? I have no idea the Russian disposition on North and South Korea. No idea. But my first instinct wouldn't be to jump to that they wouldn't necessarily want peace, and that's bizarre. That's weird. Let's keep going. That's really bizarre.
Anniversary and put yourself in that position. You had to know that it would have negative implications for you politically and optically.
So remember, this was 2015, and this was at the time that our president, Barack Obama, was still...
You had to know that it would have tension between the countries. Let me ask you one last thing. Why did you go to the RT anniversary and put yourself in that position?
Listen to what he's asking her. Listen to what he's saying. You, as an American citizen, why did you go to the invitation of the RT thing? Why not go? Why not? Just because you're persecuting her now for something that she did, there was nothing wrong with her doing it. There's nothing wrong even now with her doing it. She's being persecuted for it because your candidate lost. That's what this really boils down to. If Hillary Clinton would have won, none of this stuff would have been an issue. All of this stuff is an issue because the candidate who you wanted to win that election lost. And you've put all of your attack dogs on going after people who she believes aided in that loss. If there is a problem with an American citizen going to Russia for any reason, when that person hasn't done anything wrong, when that person is not going there for any particular wrongdoing, he's asking her, why did you even go? Why did you even go? Is that where we are? You can't go to an event because news anchors on CNN with plastic faces may, browbeat you for for doing something like that? That's fucking insane. The woman is a United States citizen. That United States citizen decided to run in a presidential race. That is her right. And clearly there was a lot of people backing her to get her on the ballot in multiple states. If the people in this country did not like the other two candidates, then they had another candidate who they could have voted for. It is their right as American citizens for them to vote for. It's their right for her to run as an American citizen. It's as if the response is, in order to keep people like Donald Trump out, we need to fuck around and stop democracy itself. We don't need representative governments. We chose our candidate. That candidate was Hillary Clinton. That's absurd. That's absurd. Listen to what you're asking her. Why did you even go to an event? A perfectly okay event where nothing corrupt or nothing shady was taking place. Why did you even go? Let him finish this question. I just find this question to be amazing.
You had to know that it would have negative implications for you politically and optically.
So remember, this was 2015, and this was at the time that our president, Barack Obama, was still on a track of the reboot with Russia. So, we can, when we use the the Retrospective Scope, you know, it's important to put us in the context of the time. So it wasn't nearly as controversial as it would be right now. But that said, I think it's really important. You know, diplomacy is all about talking with the people that you have real problems with. And that was really my intent. On that trip, I not only talked with some low-level Russian officials. I actually did not speak with Vladimir Putin, although I would have liked to, but there was not any opportunity to do that. I also spoke with Jeremy Corbyn. I spoke with the deputy climate negotiator for China about the real issues, the crises that we have to solve. And we have to solve them in dialogue and diplomacy. And that's not only the war in the Middle East and in Syria, it's also this confrontation with nuclear weapons that we're heading towards.
Look at the banner. Jill Stein on attending Russian TV dinner with Putin in 2015. That's fucking amazing. That's just fucking amazing. And by the way, buddy, that's a stupid question. That's a very stupid question. Jill Stein, she's an American citizen. She can go anywhere she wants, knowing that it's going to be a blowback on anything else. It's 2015. You're looking back in retrospect and saying, hey, wouldn't you have known back in 2015 that this was going to be a problem when there was no issues with Russia because Hillary Clinton hadn't lost to Donald Trump? It's like, come on. Come on. Let's see. Diplomacy, how un-American, Badger Damon. I know, right? I know, right? That is a stupid question. That is a magnificently stupid question. Is this how people get jobs on CNN? Just dumb down what they're saying for their audience? And then putting banners, meeting with Putin in 2015, knowing that it has a certain connotation. It's like, this is gross. CNN, you're garbage. You're utter garbage. One of the damn robots convinced me to support Jill Stein. Now we have Trump. I'm thinking about putting a gun in my mouth. It's all our fault. God no. Right. Right. That's exactly what it is. The commies are coming together. Skip Rock, why didn't you attend a dinner with all those Mexicans? Don't you think that makes you look bad? Yeah. Yeah. Think about that. If that was anybody else. Hey, why did you attend a dinner with all those Jews? I mean, don't you know how people think about those Jews? Think like saying that about any other group, anybody else. Oh man, it's so gross. It's so gross. It's so amazing. Hello, jerk. Sexist Jill Stein voters. That's awesome. Papayani Shelley. I hate these conservatives. Wow. I think you're talking about the CNN group. We gave Trump billions of free airtime, but it's your fault. We got Trump. Chris, go eat a bowl of dick. I can't believe our media is this stupid. Like, I don't watch CNN, and so I don't necessarily get to see this all the time. But this is absurd. That guy's an idiot. He's literally asking her, hey, why did you go to a dinner that was perfectly legal to go to? I mean, didn't you know that people weren't going to like the fact that you were hanging out with those commies? Jill Stein can go to any dinner she wants. I would have loved to have gone to that dinner to meet Jeremy Corbyn if I had the opportunity to meet Jeremy Corbyn. It's not about whether or not Putin is a good or bad guy. And she's trying to make this point of an internationalist. When you're looking at the globe and you're trying to say, how do I stop war? Part of the way of stopping war is realizing that there are other people in its equation, and those people have ideas and ideas of their own rights and things that they're going to want, things that are in their interests. And they're not necessarily wrong for having those things. You are no more exceptional than the other person. I don't know where this idea came from. This is some kind of odd thing that's dredged up in the country itself. No other country has this idea of you as being exceptional. They just think of you as a person, just like they are just a person. This perspective leads CNN to weird places with regards to war. It allows them to not necessarily tell the truth about what goes on in the rest of the world with context. I mean, the most important thing that he said there is, well, yeah, what you're saying is right, but you can understand from the American perspective. Is that the only perspective you give at CNN? And do you honestly think you can really give the news in an honest way if that's the perspective that you're giving? It's fucking ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. Doesn't it make you feel insane? What this anchor is saying is insane, yet it works on swaths of the people. Duckhead. Yeah, it does. It's so bizarre to me. I watched that and I think to myself, this guy's an idiot. That's what I think to myself. I think that question is idiotic. By the same token, they're in a bubble where that question makes perfect sense. And we're in a bubble where it doesn't. In their bubble, Trump and Russia did something. It's the fact that it was 13 Twitter bots or whatever, or 13 Twitter trolls. That doesn't really matter. That goes out the window. The only thing that gets talked about is Russia somehow interfered, and somehow that hurt Hillary Clinton. They never really make the point that it had no impact on the election itself. Zero. Not even the wildest maniac would tell you that it did. But that doesn't really matter. All they want is the optics. They want to be able to get around this whole lefty stuff and around the whole losing to Donald Trump thing by blaming the Russians. I mean, it's like, come on. CNN is missing the point. Jill Stein is sexist for not supporting Hillary Clinton. Joshua Renshaw. There you go, Joshua. There you go. That's what it is. She was fucking sexist. She knew she should have supported that corrupt Hillary Clinton. Jonathan Melton. At least Jill and the Greens are bought into the public consciousness by this. Trump taught us that any exposure is good exposure. You know, the wild part about that is I love the fact that she was able to bring in actual information to the questions that he was asking her. Love it. Because at the very least, the audience that's looking at that may see her and say, well, honestly, I don't know. Maybe the audience completely blots out everything else and just sees Trump, Russia, we got, Hillary Clinton losing. I don't know what the CNN audience sees. This is a bunch of geriatrics who's watching this stuff. I have no idea. There's a special place in hell for Jill Stein, Madeleine Albright. Skip Rock. Right, because she said there's a special place in hell for any woman that voted for that didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. And now you have somebody who actually ran against Hillary Clinton. So you know there's a special place in hell for Jill Stein. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Shelly, they know what they're doing, Jamal. They're on their message. Shelly, I always run into this thing of whether they're corrupt or whether they're incompetent. And I can never really quite know which. Are they useful idiots or are they just corrupt? Can't tell which. I can't tell. Sometimes the mask's too good. Jake Tapper, when he was told that they had terrorists in that other country, Jake Tapper knew they had terrorists in that country. He just wasn't telling his audience. So, yeah, there's that. There's that. So glad I voted for Jill Stein and Cheryl Honka in 12th and Dr. Jill and Jabu Baraka in 2016. Vindicated. Bob Ramirez said, here's Bob. All of this BS proves that Trump has been an effective human hand grenade lobbed into the system. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you still don't have me on that. I feel you, Bob. I feel you, man. I feel you. I understand where you're coming from. If, let's say nothing else mattered. Let's say the goal was just purely to win. Whatever winning means, whatever context you want to come up with winning. Let's say in this game, it's politics. Our goal is to win politically. And somebody says, look, you need to hurt the Democratic Party to make that party weak enough where something else can take hold, like a progressive force or something. And you do that by not voting for the Democrat. Then somebody else comes and says, no, I can up you one. You do that by voting for the Republican himself. As gross as he is, as covered with warts, as slimy as he is, you vote for that guy because that's the guy, that's the hand grenade that you could throw at the Democratic Party. Essentially, you're building your Godzilla to beat their King Kong. That's essentially what it is. They have their radiated, mutated animal, and you create your radiated, mutated animal, and you send it out to fight theirs, hoping that they kill each other, and you can kind of step in and take the mantle. The problem I have with that is that mutated animal is so gross, and he is going to do such gross things. And in the gross things that he does, I don't want my fingerprints on the fact that he did those gross things. The political system itself, I want people to vote for who they want to vote for. I mean, full-throatedly. None of this head shit. If you don't like the Democrat, don't vote for the Democrat. That's where I want people to be. Now, you might say people are better off voting for Trump in this case. I don't want Trump in that office. And I don't want my fingerprints on him being there. So, I feel where you're coming from, Bob, but fuck, man. Kinky. Oh, man, I love your name. Jill Scott is not the greatest orator. She's too timid and kind, which is a shame. She actually did a good job there, though. She did a damn good job in those interviews. I thought Jamal stopped doing live shows. Hello, jerk. I didn't stop doing live shows. I just wasn't doing them 10 times a day. No, so what am I planning on? I plan on doing 1 or 2 live shows a day, with multiple videos being put out during the day. I realized I ended up doing like 4 or 5 live shows. Now, the problem is, if I do a live show and the live show goes for like an hour, and then they demonetize that live show, it's like YouTube has found a way to screw you over, particularly when they're talking about people who are just coming up in their videos. An hour show has 2 faults against it. One fault is that people don't necessarily like to watch it because it's an hour, but it has a secondary fault where if it's demonetized, then you could have done X number of videos within the time frame you did that one long video. So then you get into this thing of YouTube is fucking with you. It's almost like on 2 counts. So what I plan on doing is still doing live videos with my audience whenever it strikes my fancy. That may be 3 in the morning. Usually it's going to be 5 or 6 in the evening, something to that effect. Most of the time it's going to be in the evenings. That may end up being in the mornings. Let's be honest, I do live videos pretty much anytime I feel the fancy to do a live video. But I'm also going to be doing shorter, smaller videos put out through the day. Those videos are more accessible. People tend to like those more. And I've had people to ask for shorter videos also. So my goal is to offer both. That's my goal. YouTube is aggravating the shit out of me though. They demonetized a video talking about Bernie Sanders. What the fuck? What the fuck? Yeah. Every day that Jamal doesn't put out 31 hours of content, I get scared that the spooks finally got him. Joshua Richard. Yeah, I know, right? When I feel like doing videos, I try to do right many of them because there are going to be days where I don't feel like doing anything. And if on days where I feel like I'm burnt out or something like that, I want to be able to leave it. And my patrons and everybody else still say, well, look, he put out 10 videos the prior day. I mean, call the shit even. You don't need to justify anything. I was only joking. Hello, jerk. No. I need to explain that. I mean, I do want you guys to know what the hell I'm doing. I don't want to just make moves and people are like, what the hell just took place? It'll spook get them. No, I am trying to figure out a way to navigate turning this into a part-time job or business. On my taxes, I have to file this as a small business. And if I have to file this shit as a small business, I might as well try to make it a small business. I have to be honest, this has created complications. Like, it's created weirdnesses. And there are oddities that come along with doing this that are bizarre, that you never really think of. But no, I'm trying to figure out the way to navigate the way YouTube is doing now, and the way they're doing their demonetizations. Pretty much just nearly anything that you put out get demonetized. But also putting out the maximum amount of content, meaning people still get the content like I was putting out before. That means I may not do as many live videos because live videos tend to go much longer. But I'm still going to do them. And you're still probably going to see me twice a day. And let's be honest, there are going to be days you see me 2 or 3 times a day. And if something goes on, probably 4. So Jamal is figuring out a way to try to get more Trump viewership. Jay Scott. I don't think that's what I'm trying to do. So that's obvious. I think Jamal has been got by the monster under the hat when he doesn't show up. Jamal is holding up a newspaper, so we know the date. I know, right? I know, right? It's like, this is the real date. This is the real date. It's not an animatronic Putin robot that's put up in order to say shit about America or something like that. Yeah. Just don't go Kanye on us. Oh, geez. Did you see that video? Oh, man. I was thinking about doing that video because I saw that video and I thought, I was like, he can't be serious. Like, but then I thought, maybe he is serious. Like the CNN viewer who looks at that interview and say, that was a damn good interview. That guy did a great job. And I love that last question because that bitch got Hillary Clinton to lose the election. Like, that viewer, like, somebody is in that headspace. Those are people, believe it or not, those people are out there. They exist in that reality. That is their worldview when they look around, when they're weighing events and figures and facts and everything else. That's the lens to which they weigh those things. So when I hear Kanye say stuff like that, I think to myself, is he doing this for viewership? This kind of being over the top. Like, I'm looking for new and better ways to be over the top, and this is one of those ways of being over the top by hitting that rail of blacks in the Republican Party. Or is he being serious? And I honestly can't tell. Honestly can't tell. And that's sad. Because if he's being serious, Kanye West needs mental help. Honestly, he needs mental help. he said slavery was a choice, and he was like, "Come on, man, 700 years? I mean, 400 years? I mean, are you telling me that after 400 years you're still in bondage?" Yes, asshole. It's fucking slavery. What do you think it is? You think those people were in bondage because they wanted to be in fucking bondage? It's like, come on. Kanye West is a fucking idiot. I saw him give that interview, and whether Kanye West was joking, whether Kanye West was hitting the rail, I was like, I don't really want to do that video, because the video annoyed the shit out of me, because I thought this man is the stupidest man alive. If I'm being honest. Jamal should really do more stuff on other platforms so he can reach more viewers that he would not normally reach on YouTube. That's why he says crazy shit. Oh, you think it's the cocaine? Cocaine is a crazy drug. The Rick James thing. Cocaine is a hell of a drug. Kanye does seem to need mental help. Yes, he seemed like something was off mentally in that interview on TMZ. In fact, fuck it. I'm going to do that interview. Yeah, I'm going to do that interview. He needs a soft couch and a head shrinking. Poor Yeezy. He's high on fake booty. I have no idea what that means. It's like he's like sniffing ass. It's funny. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that. You know what is worse than drug? Money. I wonder if it's the cocaine. So when he first came out and said he's a Trump supporter, I thought to myself, he's a Republican. Being, he knows who's going to lower his taxes more. And maybe that's why he's a Republican. Fuck race and everything else. I think those things are less important than economics anyway. I think that because I think class is the one distinction that supersedes all that other stuff. Just because Obama is black doesn't necessarily mean he's looking out for your particular class. And yet people who see him as black would think he's looking out for their class just because he's black. It doesn't work that way. So, all right, I'm going to end this. I think I'm going to do the Kanye West one. You guys have talked it up. I was annoyed by that video. I thought Kanye West needed mental help, and so I'm going to do that video. But I'm going to end this here. I need to go talk to my wife for a bit, so I'll probably be back in 30-40 minutes. Thanks, guys. All right, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you guys can always support the Patreon. Thanks, everyone. And we had a decent crowd. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. I thought after the UFO one, people were like going to say, fuck this. I'm not coming back to this shit. Let me make a statement on that real quick. I did I think 2 UFO things with Grant Cameron and Stephen Bassett. I like those guys because when I throw a stone, I can step to the next stone and see where they're coming from when they're doing their stuff. Not everything that Grant does. Grant does some stuff where I can't reach it. But some of this other stuff, yes, I can. The stuff coming out with the New York Times, political and all that stuff, gave me the political attitude to talk about this stuff because I find this to be one of the most fascinating fucking subjects on the planet. And it's one of those fascinating fucking subjects that nobody talks about, and I never understand why nobody talks about it. So, getting the opportunity to talk about it. Now, the Myers case, as I tried to impress upon Michael, I tried to get across from that. It's not that they don't touch this case because people feel that the case has been debunked. Now, whether it's been debunked or not, it's kind of besides the point. It's how the case is perceived. And because the case is perceived that way, they don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So, no, nobody goes towards it. Nobody touches it. Nobody says anything about it. And you can see that Michael is a little antagonistic towards those other groups because of that. He's a little testy about it. But he plugs along with it, and he pushes it. And when he contacted me, I honestly didn't know whether or not I was going to bring him on the show. I was like, maybe not. I was like, when I first started, I think it was maybe 6 years ago, I had this intense need to understand the UFO thing. I was like, this is fucking fascinating. Why isn't nobody talking about this stuff? And then having the history of the New Agey stuff, I was like, all right, fine, I'll look into it. And then you first weave your way through aliens are eating babies and aliens are sucking brains out and all this other stuff. And then you get to real investigators. And when you get to those real investigators, you say to yourself, okay, this guy comes across as sane to me. This other guy, not so much. This guy comes across as sane to me. This guy has things that are within my experience where I could at the very least touch where he's getting at. And at a certain point, you start seeing a little bit more evidence, a little bit more information, and you're like, there's a cacophony of stuff here that gets across that something is going on. Now, what that is, who the fuck knows? That's the billion-dollar question. But it's like, you don't really get to that point until you bring on people, give them their point of view. That's Michael's point of view. I was especially curious to hear about his point of view with regard to the stuff that's being released for Tom DeLonge and all. In his mind, Myers is the only thing. He's like a messiah figure. And because he's like a messiah figure, the other stuff is nonsense. I don't have that point of view. But I did bring the other guys on, so I thought it was only fair that I put Michael Horn on. So I thought to myself, I was like, oh God, I hope my audience doesn't look at this in bulk. Because Cameron is different. And I would say so is Stephen Bassett. They're different. People may disagree with them, and they may say, okay, these guys are a little off the farm. But they're different. And fuck, man, I don't mean this in a bad way. It is the reason why I asked the question about the Jesus thing. Is like the guy say he went back in time and met Jesus. Aliens took him back in time. That's such an extraordinary claim. Like, that's mind blowing. Like, if somebody tells you that, it's like. And I laugh with that because I wanted to establish this thing. Like, for example, it's only fair. Sometimes I would ask my mom, I was like, do you honestly believe that he lived in the belly of a fish for 4 days or for a week or whatever? And I asked that question because I try to establish where are you on that scale of believability of this stuff. That's an extraordinary claim. I'll say it that way. I'm being polite. That's an extraordinary claim. That's why I started off with that particular question, because I was curious about where he stood. He gave you his perspective. So I'll leave it at that. Badger Damon, I haven't watched it yet, but at least he's not the guy claiming to have been a time traveler with Obama and will be president. Or better yet, the time traveling hackers that went back and changed Joy and Reed stuff. Yeah, that's hilarious. Kevin Eckert, they're like crack to ET. Because why wouldn't aliens like Reeses Pieces? They're dope. Reeses Pieces are dope. Reeses Pieces are fucking awesome. Alright, guys. I'm just trying to give a little clarity on why I do certain cases like this. I think those things are important. And I think those things are beginning to intrude on our politics. So I kind of want to get ahead of those things that are intruding on our politics. And like I said, the political space was opened up by Washington Post and so forth. So I bring them on. And by the way, I'm not opposed to bringing on people who are like that. I'm perfectly okay with it. I have 420 segments for a reason. I want the show to be able to expand beyond just the political part and talk about all sorts of weird and interesting things. I'm about to do a show on Kanye West, talking about slavery being a choice. You know, so that gives you an idea on the range of stuff that I do. I talk about Star Trek. I talk about OBEs. I talk about all sorts of stuff. I have a range of stuff that I talk about. Those are usually isolated in 420 segments. Sorry, I'm getting stopped up. But I guess my point is, I have a lot of new subscribers. And for my new subscribers, my show runs the gambit. The overwhelming majority of the show is politics, international politics, international affairs, those type of things with analysis and this kind of Howard Zinn-esque view of the world. With a Jack Fresco look at how we probably should organize ourselves, or at the very least close to Fresco-esque. I'm not necessarily sold on the Fresco model. Like, it's funny, as I get older, I become less sold on that model. The reason I become less sold on that model, and fuck, we're in the weeds. But the reason I'm less sold on that model is one very specific point. Assume for the moment that machines can do the majority of the work. And this is after talking to Roxanne, by the way. Like, before I talked to Roxanne, I was a little bit more sold. After talking to her, I became less sold because she couldn't answer a very specific question. Who cleans the warp coils? Have you wondered that? Who cleans the warp coils? And what I mean by that is, you own Star Trek. And let's say in this place you don't have cash or anything else. And let's say you're using some kind of fusion warp coil to power your civilization on Earth. Earth is a utopia. Great. Money doesn't exist. Great. Now, people are doing things because their value system is different and they want to improve. So anybody can go to school anywhere they want. There's no such thing as McDonald's. Most people are probably not going to be overweight because there's no reason to give people mounds of food for them to be overweight. You have a utopian-esque society. But there's one question that I always have. Who cleans the warp coils? Meaning, for that generator that's powering those things, assume for the moment that you can't find a computer or machine or something else to do that. Who cleans it? Who digs into the hole? Who crawls into the thing and scrubs the plasma conduits? Who does that? And what are you using to prod that guy to do that? That's my only question. Like the other stuff, you don't need McDonald's to exist. You don't need Burger King to exist. You don't need any fast food place to exist. You don't need lawyers to exist. The thing that you need for the most part, education, doctors, nursing, engineers, all of those things would exist anyway. People would do those things because people love to do those things. The things that won't exist are the things that people hate to do. Meaning, I don't necessarily want to work at McDonald's if I don't have to work at McDonald's. I don't necessarily have to want to work at Burger King or Old Navy if I don't have to work at those places. So, if you have a society where people don't necessarily need to work per se, those people won't do those jobs. Those things won't exist. You would have some other means of distribution of clothing and everything else. If anything, you would probably have something like Amazon where you can say, this is what I want. And those things are shipped to you in your own style, design, and everything else. But the question becomes, who does the plasma conduits? Assuming that some of the jobs that are done can't necessarily be automated, who does those jobs? I'm fascinated and curious about that very specific point. You can make an argument that says in the same way that you get people to go and fight wars, that you could instill a certain amount of dedication to country. So instead of going and murdering people, your value system puts you into saying, I want to do things for the country itself. I don't want to go and kill people for the country. I want to actually do things to build a country. I can see that. If somebody wants to build a maglev from point A to point B and you have government workers or somebody who's organized themselves in order to create something that goes from point A to point B with a maglev train, I can see them doing that without a capitalistic instinct to do that. That's just technology advancing, and that's just you getting engineers and everybody else to do it. People will go into their own fields and the things that they want to do, so forth. But who does the shitty jobs? That's the part that I miss. Who cleans the street? Now, somebody may say, well, you wouldn't have a street cleaner. The street would automatically clean itself. Fair enough. But assuming for the moment that 100% of the jobs can be automated, and not all jobs, you know, you're going to have teachers and everything else. So fair enough. But I'm talking about the crummy jobs, the crappy jobs. You know, it's like, who does those things? So that's the part that I'm curious about. And that's not the part that I don't necessarily have an answer for. Which puts me in the mindset that there needs to be something to prod people along, not based on needs. Like, your needs should be met regardless, but something that prods people along in a particular system to kind of to do certain things. And prod may be the wrong word. Maybe give extra incentive in order to do after their needs met. I don't know. I just love the fresco model up until that very specific point that I can't get over to that stone to see how that takes place. So, alright, so I'm going to end this because I've been running my mouth. Alright, guys, I will see you probably in like an hour or so. Thanks everyone for showing up. You guys have a good night.